Good morning, Year 4. It is Tuesday the 26th of January, and this video is for the children who have the Year 4 comprehension booklet. Today we are going to be looking at page 24, which has the title Peter Pan. Okay, so your learning question for today is, can I retrieve answers from the text Peter Pan? So we're going to be using our guided reading dog retrieval Rex, who retrieves information from the texts and he looks for facts to answer questions. So just keep in mind that we're going to be using retrieval Rex to help us with today's work. Okay, so before I start, I'm just going to cover over some of the new vocabulary that you'll be looking at today when you read Peter Pan. Now, these words are in the glossary at the bottom of your text. So if you just look there, they're just down below. But I thought we'd have a look at the vocabulary together because when we do our guided reading sessions together, we like to look at the vocabulary and have a think about what they mean and whether or not we know those words, okay? So very quickly, I'll just read them out and then we'll discuss them. Born, gallant, desist, luring, indignant, and attire. So born means to be carried somewhere, okay? So that means to travel or to move in a certain way. Gallant is another word that means to be brave, okay? So sort of heroic. Desist means to stop. Luring means to attract someone, okay? So you're luring them in. Indignant is another word that we use to describe how we feel, and the feeling that indignant is associated with is annoyed. So if you're feeling annoyed or angry by something. And attire is a posh word for clothing. Okay, so now that we've had a look at our new vocabulary, I'd like you to pause the video. I'd like you to read through the text at least twice, and then we're going to go through the questions together, and I'm going to break down how we answer these questions just so it's a little bit easier for you so that you can understand where you need to go and what steps you need to take, okay? So feel free to pause the video here, read through the text a couple of times and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you've read through the text at least twice by now. So before we answer the questions, you need to read through the text at least twice, which hopefully you've already done. You need to underline any unfamiliar vocabulary, check what those words mean before you continue, okay? So I want you to have a go at figuring out what those words mean because it's really important that we have an understanding of those words. You can use a dictionary to help you as well as the glossary in your text, okay? So you do have a glossary at the bottom of your page, but if the words that you have underlined aren't in the glossary, then have a look in a dictionary, whether that's online, like we looked at yesterday, or a physical book, okay? So, question 1. What happens to Michael in lines 1 to 2? So I've written or typed those lines out above the question, so you can see the lines that we need to look at. Now, the new vocabulary that's in our glossary that we looked at the start is in red. So you can see where that vocabulary is, just so you've got a good idea of what it means when it's written in a sentence. And then I've underlined the key words that I would be looking for when I scan the text to answer the question. So I've looked and I can see that the name Michael is in the first sentence. So that means I'm in the right place in the text. So this is lines 1 to 2 that I've typed out. I've then carried on reading and I can see here that it says immediately he was borne across the room. Now we all know that the word borne means to be carried. So looking at the text, underlining the key words based on what I have highlighted in my question, I have written the answer. Michael let go of the bed and he was carried across the room, because we know that they were on their beds and he let go and then he went across the room, okay? So that's how I have come to my answer. I've read the text, I've scanned, picked out the key words, and because I know what the word born means, because I use the glossary, I was able to answer the question, okay? So that's what you and what I would expect you to write for question 1. Question 2, who is better at flying, Peter or the other children? How can you tell? So the question is asking who, and it's asked whether it's Peter or the other children. It's looking for you to state who is the best flyer and how you can tell. So I scanned through the text and I've picked out some key sentences and phrases that tell me the answer. So I've picked out here, they were not nearly so elegant as Peter, they could not help kicking a little. And then I've read further on and I can see the phrase Peter gave Wendy a hand at first. So the word elegant makes me think of someone that's sophisticated, that's got control over their body, and they know what they're doing because they've done it so many times before. And then I've also read that Peter's had to help Wendy. So that makes me think that Peter is the better flyer because he looks more elegant than the others and he's had to help Wendy. Okay, so this is how I would write it in a sentence. Peter is better at flying as the author tells us that he was more elegant than the other children and he also helped Wendy to begin with. Okay, so that's the type of sentence that I would expect you to write. So I've stated here, if I get my highlighter, I've stated here that Peter is better at flying. It's told us, oh, let's rub that out. It's told us that he was more elegant and that he helped Wendy. So can you see how I've used the sentences in the text to help me to answer the question? Question number 3 is asking which adjective does Wendy use to describe flying in lines 10 to 15. Now I haven't written all of the lines 10 to 15 because I've read it and I can recognise what word it is that Wendy has used. Now an adjective, we all know what one is. An adjective is something that helps us to describe and emphasise our words in our sentences. So it's a description word that helps us to add extra information and detail to our sentences and to describe what each word is like, okay? Or what a certain action is like or a feeling, okay? So we know what an adjective is. Now they don't always end in ly, but a trick to help you is to see if a word ends in ly, it might usually be an adjective, okay? So that's a good trick, but it doesn't mean that all adjectives end in ly. And we're looking for Wendy. So what is it that Wendy has used to describe flying? So you need to look between lines 10 and 15 to help you find the answer. Now I've underlined in the text where I think my adjective is, and I've also underlined Wendy's word because it tells us that that is the word that she has used to describe flying. Now to check, I can see that this word ends in an ly. So I feel like heavenly would be my adjective because I can't see any other words there that describe flying. And I feel pretty confident that heavenly would be the adjective because I know that some adjectives end in ly. So I would go on to answer my question by saying Wendy uses the word, and I would write heavenly here to describe flying, and that is all we need. Such a simple sentence that gets to the point, okay? Question number 4. Why do you think Wendy hesitates in line 17? So I've typed out line 17. I did type out line 16 as well, just so that you can see how Wendy is feeling. So it says Michael was ready. He wanted to see how long it took him to do 1 billion miles. But Wendy hesitated. So we know that Michael, it sounds like he's quite excited to go flying with Peter. But why is Wendy hesitating? What is it that is stopping Wendy from feeling the same way as Michael? Now this answer isn't explicit in the text. It doesn't tell you how she's feeling other than she's hesitated. So using what you know about how Wendy has coped with flying for the first time, so she's had help off Peter and she's hesitating, what is it that is stopping her from feeling the same way as Michael? So I would start my sentence off with Wendy hesitates in line 17 because. So what is it that is stopping Wendy from wanting to fly a billion miles like Michael and wanting to go with Peter? Why? Why does she feel like that? Okay, so have a think about how you might feel if you just learned how to fly yourself and put yourself in Wendy's shoes. Okay, so she has had to have a little bit of help off Peter to help her to fly. But just have a think, what is it that's stopping her? Is she confident? Does she feel excited? Does she want to go on an adventure? Have a think. Question 5. How does Peter try to tempt the children to go with him? Now we know that another word for tempt and attract is lure or luring, okay? So you need to find in the text where it says that Peter is luring the children. So I found a bit that I think will help me with this answer. Mermaids, said Peter again. Ooh, and there are pirates. Pirates, cried John, seizing his Sunday hat. Let us go at once. So this is the text, the piece of text that I've taken from our comprehension today that I think links with question 5. So have a look there. What is it that's appealing to the children that's making them want to go with Peter? So the start of my sentence, I would perhaps consider writing, Peter tempts the children to go with him by. What's he said that's tempted the children? Okay. Question 6. How do you think the children's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Darling, are feeling in lines 22 to 27? Explain your answer. So you need to put yourselves in Mr. and Mrs. Darling's shoes. You need to read lines 22 to 27 and you need to be able to explain why. Okay? So I've typed them out on my screen just so you can see which bit of the text I'm referring to for this question so that it helps you. And I want you to follow along with your own text with your workbooks. It was just at this moment that Mr. and Mrs. Darling hurried with Nana out of 27. They ran into the middle of the street to look up at the nursery window, and yes, it was still shut, but the room was ablaze with light, and most heart-gripping sight of all, they could see in shadow on the curtains 3 little figures in night attire circling around and round. Not on the floor, but in the air. Not 3 figures, 4. So straight away, I would highlight not 3 figures, 4. I would also highlight but in the air. And I would also highlight this bit. The room was ablaze with light. So it's late at night and Mr. and Mrs. Darling have gone outside and they can see that their children's bedroom has its light on. So straight away as a parent, I would be concerned because the children aren't asleep, they're wide awake and the light is on. I would also highlight but in the air because I can see shadows, but they're flying around the room. So I might be a little bit concerned, shocked, worried because I can see that there are figures flying around in the air. And I know I've got 3 children because they're my children. But there are 4 children in there, 4 figures. Who is this extra person? Is it a stranger? Okay, so have a think. So I've picked out the key phrases and words from those lines to help me to put my answer together, okay? So I would start my answer off with, I think that Mr. and Mrs. Darling were feeling something because, and then you would argue and explain why you think the parents would be feeling that way. You need to show me, the person who's going to be marking your work, why they would feel that way. Okay, so you've got to prove to me with things from the text as to why they would feel the way that you think they would feel. Okay. And the last question, We don't need any examples from the text for this because it's an opinion question, so it's asking about what you think. So it says, in Peter Pan, Peter never grows up. Do you want to grow up, or would you like to be a child forever? Explain your answer. So for this one, you just need to think about how you would feel. Would you want to be like Peter Pan, or would you rather be like Mr. and Mrs. Darling, where you can have a house, you can drive, you get a job, you earn money, you can have your own children, you could have your own dog. Okay, so have a think. What would you prefer, to be a child forever or to grow up and become an adult? Okay, so after you've answered those 7 questions, I'm going to set you a challenge. Your challenge for today is to imagine that you wake up one morning to find that you can fly just like the Darling children. How might you feel? What would you do? And where would you go? So have a go. You might want to write this down on some paper. You might want to record a video of yourself telling me why. And please send in any examples of your home learning to our Year 4 email address, which is on the screen right now. I can't wait to see what you come up with for your challenge. If you've got any questions or queries, please let me know. And as always, send in your home learning. It's lovely to see the work that you get up to, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.